To start this off, Radiohead are one of my favorite artists of all time. I think the music that they create is spectacular, and all the rankings are my opinion. And if you disagree with me, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. Deal with it. In all seriousness, though, this video is just to show what my opinions are, and it doesn't really matter. As music is subjective and people can have different opinions, it doesn't really matter, but just know that I am right. Anyway, I'll not be including bootlegs, live albums, interviews, remixes, EPs, or archival albums, or any of the albums under the other names, which is I'm not including On a Friday or The Greatest Shindig. This list is just the 10 studio-produced albums that they have released under the Radiohead name. But with all this said, let's get into it. The debut record from this fantastic band, one of the greatest groups in musical history quite easily, started off pretty shaky. We used to seeing great artists and bands have incredible debut albums that they never managed to beat or sometimes come even close to, even to the point where you can't even make a fair case for one being better than their undisputed best. A few examples of artists and albums that could fit this category is Nas with Illmatic, Television's Marquee Moon, Introducing from DJ Shadow, Ready to Die from Biggie Smalls. In the case of Radiohead though, it's the complete opposite. Pablo Honey is quite easily their worst, and it's not even close. Sure, you have songs like Creep or Blowout, but you can name multiple songs from each album in the Radiohead discography better than these two. I mean, the ideas portrayed on this album, sure, they were brilliant at the time, but not even 4 years later they were turned into these creative ideas that went into one of the greatest albums of all time. And I'm not going to stay on this one for long. Let's head over to number 9. He's taking me under. King of the Limbs is the only other record on this list that I wouldn't say I love, although I enjoyed it quite a lot at first listen. The more I listened to it, the more confusing and fuzzy it became, eventually becoming a mess at the end of 4 or 5 listens. It's not that I didn't understand it or I just listened to more music over time, I just lost interest in the album. There are definitely some great points in the album though, Lotus Flower being one of my favourite songs, Post in Rainbows, and Separator was a great closing track for an album of the sorts. Again, not going to stay long into this album, overall good, but not great. Go on in my left, go on in my right. Hail to the Thief is most likely Radiohead's most controversial album. Some people have it low down in the list, while some people compare it to some of their best albums. Personally, for me though, it sits in the middle of this list, and although sure the album is not Radiohead's best, the experimentation with electronic music and political themes are something I find quite outstanding and unique with this album. There and 2 + 2 = 5 are a couple of Radiohead's best song to date, and the outro, A Wolf at the Door, concludes this album in quite a classic Radiohead manner, combining all the sounds from the album and shoving them into one beautiful and delicate track. I personally love this album and I'm forever grateful that they released this, but for me it isn't in the top 6. Here is where we get into real albums, the real good, incredible, critically acclaimed stuff. The Bends is the sophomore and follow-up album after Pablo Honey. Easily one of the best Britpop albums of all time, and Radiohead finally got to show off to the world what they really had inside of them. With a lot of long-lasting bands, replacing members is quite a common theme. I mean, maybe you just change a drummer, maybe a lead man, or having one member stay in the group forever. This is something most notable with bands like King Crimson, Juju, Swans, and Yes. But these 5 British guys decide to stick it out for the long run and stay together even after over 20 releases, and even going back until 1985 when they were called On a Friday. That's 35 plus years of creating music, and no one ever thinks of quitting or thinking to replace someone. That is just, for me, that is just some real effort, and Even in the beginning days of the band with the Bends, we have some incredible tracks that really show some intricate album ideas and experimental processes. Fake Plastic Trees, Street Spirit, and Planet Telex are a few of my favourite songs from the group. But enough about the Bends, let's hop into the top 5. It is the time of our lives. I know a lot of people aren't really the biggest fans of AMNESIAC, but personally, the ideas and experimentation put into this album are some of their most ambitious and intriguing, and they execute it in a manner of excellence. Pyramid Song is one of my favourite songs of all time, and the outro Life in a Glass House portrays empty feelings of anxiety and really encapsulates what this album is really all about. The jazz rock themes on here are pretty cool, and let's not forget about how atmospheric and somber tracks Knives Out and I Might Be Wrong are. And sure, sometimes tracks 7 to 10 can lose me, but every other song in here deserves the title Near Perfection. I said it's complicated. Radiohead's most recent studio album, A Moon-Shaped Pool, is a reminder of where Tom Yorke's mental and creative state is at. After a bittersweet divorce from his ex-wife of 14 years, Tom was no longer in his usual alternative music creative mind. Instead, he adventures with more artsy sounds. The band plays around with lush and ethereal chords. The producer Niall Goderich experiments with atmospheric and mysterious sound effects, and Tom sings with some of the most melancholic, soft and depressive lyrics I've ever heard to this day. A lot of people would say the highlight of this album is held within the hands of the track Daydreaming, while True Love Waits is where all this album feels complete and special, a place of worry and anxiety. Overall, this album, sure, it's a tough road perhaps, but one that is really worth the bumpy ride.
Yeah, it's another one, baby. Yeah, you know I'm in the building.
Boy. Oh yeah, let's go. Into the album. Let's go. Kid A. Hey guys, it's Depressthony and Zayatano here, the busiest music nerd with the best teeth in the game. The best teeth.
Boy, if you don't get...
Here to review the third best Radiohead album, legendary fourth studio album from iconic English alternative rock group Radiohead. The rise of fame came from their debut album Pablo Honey, and more specifically Creep, which still stands to be one of the most popular songs to this date. After that came their first critically acclaimed album that entered them into the spotlight and dubbed themselves the guys to watch, The Bends, a melancholic and lonely album that varies between alternative rock and Britpop. After this comes their so-called magnum opus, OK Computer. This currently stands to be not only their highest ranked album on the side of Radio Music, but the highest ranked album out of every single artist on the site. Possibly the most critically acclaimed album, along with other albums like The Dark Side of the Moon and Abbey Road. But after all this, how could Radiohead manage to make something better or even close to this level? I mean, was it a fluke? Was it just a couple lucky strums of strings? Well, in the year 2000, a new millennium has arrived, and what was brought to us was nothing short of all-time greatness. The album, Kid A. Although this isn't the best Radiohead album, being behind In Rainbows and OK Computer, it's still one hell of an album. Everything from How to Disappear Completely and the national anthem to the more uplifting Idiotech. This album is a very sad and depressing, maybe their most. Tom Yorke sounds lonely and cold, sending shivers down my spine almost. The anxious and somber guitar strums, the futuristic electronic sounds, and the soft and lush drums. The instrumentals are nothing short of lovely. This album, it's amazing. Nothing wrong with it. I'm seriously feeling a 10 on this album. Transition into number 2. Here we go. Look, this album is amazing, but it ain't no My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or my personal favorite, In Rainbows. But I guess it's okay. Wow! I originally rated this album a 7 when I was a massive loser. Now, at age 15, I'm even more of a loser, giving me a sole reason to give this album a perfect score of a 10. First off, Let Down is my second favourite Radiohead song of all time, up there with How to Disappear Completely, Fake Plastic Trees, and Weird Fishes / Arpeggi. The instrumentals on here are probably the most satisfying and sustaining compared to every other Radiohead album, and I would still say Tom York is incredible on this album, but he is better on a couple other Radiohead favourites. Depression is a gift though. Tom York predicted the future on how computers and technology would not only save our planet, but would be our definite downfall.
Death is inevitable, I guess I'm too real. It was the 11th of April. Death is inevitable, I guess I'm too real. It was the 11th of April.
Originally, I was just going to read my 1,000-word review on In Rainbows, but I realized it's just going to take too long, and I feel like you guys get bored after it, so I'm just going to improvise on the spot here. Look, In Rainbows, my favorite record from them, used to be a top 10 of all time, it's now selling around 12, 13. I absolutely adore the album. Body Snatchers, Nude, 15 Step, Weird Fishes, and Arpeggi is actually my favorite on the album. There's just a lot of melancholy feelings, and I feel like every single member is on top of their game on that album. I feel like it's Tom York's best track. I feel like it's Ed O'Brien's best, Johnny Greenwood's best, and I just feel like all together, with all 5 members playing at their best, it perfectly encapsulates what Radiohead really are about. For me, it's personally their magnum opus, but yeah. So, yeah. I guess this concludes my worst to best for Radiohead. Comment down below what is your favorite Radiohead release, and comment which artist I should rank next. Comment down your rankings as well, maybe. The list for where I rank artist discographies on Radio Music will also be down in the description. And
feeling the listening to me, you pray. Feeling the energy, feeling the